unconscious is the place where all of our shadows, broken dreams, hopes, and suppressed desires hide. It's the place where we store our thoughts, emotions, and intentions that we are not aware of. For most of our lives, we think that we operate from the conscious mind, but that is not true. The conscious mind is only the tip of the iceberg. According to Freud's iceberg theory, all of the causes and motivations behind our behaviors lie in the unconscious. Freud says that the preconscious mind is like a mental waiting room in which thoughts remain until they succeed in attracting the eye of the conscious, while the unconscious stores all of the fears, unacceptable desires, violent motives, irrational wishes, selfish needs, along with the shameful and traumatic experiences. Most of the time we succeed in suppressing the emotions. But what happens when the water spills over the cup? We will see in the movie Black Swan. Black Swan is not only famous for its star-studded cast with Natalie Portman playing as the main character, Nina Sayers. It is also recognized for its exploration of complex aspects of the human psyche, such as the consequences of suppressing our shadow, our sexuality, and the self-destructive pursuit of perfectionism. The plot is well summed up in its IMDb page. Nina is a talented but unstable ballerina on the verge of stardom. Pushed to the breaking point by her artistic director and seductive rival, Nina's grip on reality slips, plunging her into a waking nightmare. I personally recommend this movie because it is a masterfully crafted psychological thriller. Having watched it twice, I still felt shivers at the end. The crew delved deeply enough to make you experience Nina's transitions. Even the opening that introduces us into this movie is so well orchestrated. We have the music inspired by Tchaikovsky's Swan Lake, joined by Lily's echoes and the artistic director's laughter. It's as if we are already entering Nina's psyche from the very beginning. We have Nina sitting in the darkness. She represents the light shining in her consciousness. If we use Freud's logic that is concise briefly at the beginning, we can say that she represents her own conscious part of her psyche. She shines a light into the preconscious and the unconscious. As she stands up and starts wandering to the void, the Black Swan appears as the culmination of the shadows of Nina's consciousness. It grabs her as if it wants her attention, is trying to pull her close to it, is trying to connect with the ballerina, but she rejects it completely. While she's trying to run away from the Dark Prince, she's desperately moving her wings as if she is trying to fly again after falling into the abyss. If you take a close look at every detail of Black Swan, you'll notice how meticulously the filmmakers crafted each scene. This attention to detail is evident from the very first scene after the main character's dream. The haunting and mysterious music, the specific shots that foreshadow future events, and the sound effect added when Nina's mother passes by the camera all contribute to the film's intricate design. As Nina stretches and reflects on her dream, her mother remains oblivious to her daughter's introspection. When Nina talks about being featured more prominently in the company this season, her mother's controlling behavior becomes apparent. She dresses Nina as if she were a child, obsesses over a wound on Nina's back, and tries to convince her to come to work with her. Even when the mother hugs her, she is directly staring into the wound through the mirror. She looks at it as if there is something so wrong with it, it's so flawed that it ruins this perfection. Nina insists on going on her own. This determination is highlighted by an interesting filming choice. Nina gazes at her reflection in the darkened windows of the metro until she notices Lily. This moment is amazingly depicted, as Nina initially perceives and stares at Lily's reflection as identical to her own. As Nina arrives in the Blake company, we are introduced to this toxic environment where the colleagues constantly gossip and share their negative views of the company they're working in. Competitiveness is polluted with the need to bring others down, along with the egotistical intentions to look out only for themselves. We find out that Beth will be replaced with someone new who is going to play as the Swan Queen. As all of the ballerinas are gossiping, the new dancer comes into the room at whom Nina can't resist staring through the mirror. We have a lot of mirrors in this movie, logically, and I like that. As all of them are practicing, we see the artistic director, Thomas Leroy, for the first time. He comes in to choose the ballerinas for the new choreography. He explains the story of Swan Lake.
We all know the story. Virginal girl, pure and sweet, trapped in the body of a swan. She desires freedom, but only true love can break the spell. Her wish is nearly granted in the form of a prince. But before he can declare his love, her lustful twin, the Black Swan, tricks and seduces him. Devastated, the white swan leaps off a cliff killing herself, and in death finds freedom.
Thoma wants to choose the right Swan Queen who can embody both the Black Swan and the White. While the chosen ones are getting prepared for the Swan Lake practices at 5 o'clock, Nina encounters Beth's rage by hearing her screaming and breaking things in her studio. As Beth is leaving, the door is calling for Nina. She's stunned by the perfect interior of the little room, especially by the retired ballerina's seductive lipstick to the point where she steals it. Later on, everyone is watching Nina practicing as the White Swan. She's portraying her perfectly through her controlled, perfect and rational movements. But that's not the only thing that the director wants to see. He wants to see her Black Swan as well. This is where she's struggling. Because of her overly perfect and thoughtful movements, the Black Swan is nowhere to be seen. As she's making the desperate fouettes to achieve this perfection, Lily triggers her enough to lose her balance. The immense pressure is weighing on Nina, making her more desperate to achieve this perfection and execute everything well. She doesn't know how to do that because she's already perfect. Where do you go from here? As Lily is entering, we can see her confident and relaxed state shining in the room. It's the literal opposite of Nina's psychological state, which is depicted through the scene where she's throwing up in the bathroom as a result of the unbearable pressure and expectations. Filled with disappointment in herself, she's walking to the metro where she hears the phone ringing. It's her mother calling for her. But what is she going to say to her? She can foresee her mother's externalized disappointment, and so she decides not to answer the phone. As she continues walking, she sees a woman dressed revealingly in black, with her long, pretty hair falling down, staring at her with a confident smile while passing by. But who is this woman? It's her Black Swan inviting her, smiling at her as if she wants to tell her something. Her dark reflection is walking the opposite way while Nina hears the phone ringing again. As she arrives home, her mother continues to cross her boundaries, revealing that she called the office to check on how Nina is doing. Nina puts on her ballet shoes again while hearing her mother complaining to the office about the director's expectations. Her desperation is getting the worst out of her physically and mentally. The pressure takes a toll on her feet. She feels a sharp pain coming from her toes. The pain is telling her to stop and pay attention. Erica says goodnight to Nina, while ignoring her frustration. She doesn't see that Nina puts all of the blame on Lily's interruption for a reason. She continues to treat Nina like a child, evident when she puts on the music box and reassures her that everything will be better in the morning, rather than addressing Nina's internal conflicts and insecurities. And so, she falls asleep in her pink room. The next day, we see a subtle change in Nina, depicted in the shot where she applies Beth's lipstick as she is looking at her reflection in the same darkened windows of the metro. We can see her hair falling down. She almost looks like the reflection she saw yesterday. We can see how she's trying to be perfect, just like Beth, by putting her lipstick on. She goes to convince Thoma that she's ready to take the part of the Black Swan. Even though she looks similar to the Black Swan in this scene, she is still rejecting it. The White Swan is still in charge. He tells her that the perfect technique is not what he wants the perfect expression of the Black Swan. She simply accepts the defeat when the artistic director responds that he chose Veronica, and she goes to leave the office. He closes the door while asking her,
That's it? You're not gonna try and change my mind? You must have thought it was possible. Otherwise, what are you doing here all dolled up?
When she tells him that she came to ask for the part, he sits down and tells her that all he can see in her is the White Swan. She tries to convince him with her quiet and timid voice, but he doesn't see the Black Swan in her. For 4 years, he only sees her obsessing over getting every movement perfectly right. He never saw her lose herself. When she argues that she just wants to be perfect, Leroy lets her know that perfection is not only about control, it's about letting go as well. He wants her to surprise herself in order to surprise the audience. He's convinced that very few have that in them. He kisses her without any consent. Thoma tries to call for Nina's Black Swan in a pretty intense way. She ends up resisting and running away because she's feeling scared and unsafe, understandably so. We can see her confusion in the next scene where Nina is unconsciously staring at Veronica the same way her mother was staring at her wound through the mirror. She congratulates Veronica, not knowing that she herself is chosen to be the Swan Queen. When she finds out, she barely waits to close herself in the bathroom stall in order to call her mom. As she exits the bathroom stall, she sees her worst fear written on yet another mirror. Her co-dancers characters attribute her taking the role solely to her appearance, shaming her already repressed sexuality. We can see here that the Black Swan is slowly calling for her to get in touch with it through the events that are happening. Suppressed emotions and instincts start to be triggered to coming out. As Nina gets home and calls for her mom, she gets this unsettling feeling from the unfinished portraits in her mother's room. It's as if all of these portraits are an attempt to absolute perfection. If you look closely, there are only portraits of her mother and Nina herself and no one else. That's a very interesting detail. Her unconscious starts to let the reality hit her for a second. She can see that when the portraits laugh at her. She closes herself in the bathroom because she feels so disturbed from the overly controlling parent. She sees the wound on her back getting bigger and more intense. It's as if wings are starting to grow. The next scene can't be more perfect. As Nina gets out of the bathroom, her mother is waiting for her with a cake. But when Nina says no to eating a piece of it right now, the mother takes it to an extreme by taking the cake and almost throwing it into the garbage. We can see Nina's lack of boundaries and her attempts to act like an adult in situations like these, by apologizing for having a boundary in the first place. In this scene, we can see her drowning the Black Swan because that part of her knows that she doesn't want the cake. She's really angry. As she's practicing the next day, Thomas tells her that her real work should be the metamorphosis into her evil twin, because he recognized her Black Swan the day she rejected him. While she's walking through the hallways, she stops and stares at Lily's imperfect but beautiful moves full of emotion. Leroy stands next to her and tells her, at least, she's not faking it. At the night of the ball, when Mr. Leroy announces Sayers as the Swan Queen, along with Beth's retirement on his speech, Nina notices another wound on her finger. As she blatantly hears the applause of congratulations, she hears a sweet voice laughing below. Is that really happening because Lily is making fun of her? Or is all of that in her mind? She's trying to clean the wound in the bathroom, but instead of cleaning it, she is mentally peeling the skin. What exactly is she peeling? Is she peeling a layer in her consciousness, or is it just the skin? When she opens the bathroom door, Lily is there, dressed in a black dress, glowing with confidence. Not exactly what Nina likes. Lily begs her to stay with her, to keep her company, but Nina rejects the offer. We can already see how Lily's confidence provokes Nina's repressed sexuality. We'll see more of that later. As Sayers is waiting for Thomas later in the evening, she's drawn by the sculpture. Is she seeing the prince or the Black Swan? As she turns around, Beth appears in the scene with a messy makeup and the devastating emotion painted all over her face. She asks her, "What did you do to take this role? What did you do to change his mind?" It's really clear that she's not hurt only because of her retirement. She's hurt because of her romantic attachment to Leroy. I also need to pinpoint this perfect exposition of the reality behind the art industries and the relationships between the artists and the directors. The reality in this movie is really sad, but it's true. These relationships evolve around ass-kissing, sexual favors, blackmailing, no freedom of speech or artistic freedom at all. Strategies and money grab. It's all about having power. The art industry in general is the same as the Hunger Games, unfortunately. Leroy is really creepy. That's another very serious topic of reality. He invites Nina for a drink with a clear purpose, a sexual transaction. However, the universe has its ways of bringing the repressed to the surface. In this situation, she encounters events that call for her to confront her sexuality, a part of herself she has long ignored. These events in the movie trigger her sexuality to emerge into the light of her conscious mind. She already feels disgusted by her internal Black Swan when he gives her the homework to go home and to touch herself. Later at home, we can see her slowly starting to rebel towards her mother. It's as if the wounds on her back have the purpose to pressure her to rebel. Just a thought. But either way, her mother doesn't respect her rebel. She continues her own ways. Erica makes it worse when she freaks out over the rash. She shames her daughter while undressing her forcefully. The mother is triggered because of Nina's past scratching habits. Instead of being present with her truly, she literally drags her into the bathroom to cut her nails and fix what's wrong with her. The Black Swan is not Nina's worst nightmare. It's her mother. She can't even please herself in her room because Erica's there sleeping. This is rather symbolic if you think about it. In most families, the children's sexuality gets really complicated because of the destructive beliefs surrounding it. In many households, we can't even get our sexual needs met because it's shameful and disgusting. And so just like in this scene, Erica represents the shame sitting in Nina's conscious mind, prevents her from getting the actual pleasure that she needs. If we wake up the shaming critic, we can't handle the consequences, and shame is the most unbearable of them all. Nina's wanted and accomplished success serves more as a catalyst than glory. She's pressured to confront so much because she chose that she wants to embody both swans, and so she's slowly meeting her Black Swan after a long time. One of the events that brings this side of her back is Beth's accident. She ended up in the hospital because she got hit by a car. Watch this carefully.
What happened?
She walked into the street and got hit by a car. And you know what? I'm almost sure she did it on purpose.
How do you know?
Because everything Beth does comes from within, from some dark impulse. I guess that's what makes her so thrilling to watch. So dangerous. Even perfect at times. But also so damn destructive.
Was it right after we saw her?
Nina Sayers goes to visit her in the hospital, even though she knows that she's not wanted there. This is where we see her slowly starting to confront the resistance of the people around her, but she still isn't confronting her own emotions. As she's looking at Beth's wounds, what she avoids confronting the most are her own feelings of shame. She's staring at the poor woman's wounds as if she herself is responsible for them. Hyper-responsibility, our best friend. We have these subtle scenes where we learn more about the characters. We see Nina trying to establish firmer boundaries by finding a piece of wood to block the door. She wants to gain some privacy. We also see a subtle moment where Nina secretly watches Erica crying in her room, only for her to enter a second later as if nothing happened. Nina's universe pushes her to confront her sexuality and get in touch with her true feminine nature. This is one aspect of the uncomfortable and morally questionable acts of Leroy. The other aspects of this event is her learning to say no. If we take into account how much her boundaries are violated by Erica along with the lack of presence of her father figure, we can see that Nina's negation of this truth led her to experiencing forced and really painful events like these. As we can see the girl suffering, her shadow and her worst enemy appears. She lights up a cigarette and offers her one. This is a bonding moment where she slowly starts accepting this Black Swan to influence her, by firstly accepting the cigarette and smoking it as if nothing happened. Lily is compassionate, understanding, supportive, and confident in herself. She starts the topic of how Thomas is a prick, which I agree with completely. Lily reveals Nina's romantic bonding towards the artistic director, and this made me question, like, why would she bond with him? Is it because of her getting power, sex, or recognition? This is definitely a part of the reason why she slowly gets attached to him despite his treatment. It's because her unconscious instincts are calling for the light of her conscious mind. She isn't falling in love with Thomas, she's falling in love with who she is becoming, especially the aspects of her Black Swan. Leroy is a big part of the causation of these new changes in her consciousness, and so she unconsciously considers him as a big part of herself. It's as if he's helping her to become her evil twin. Let's not also forget that he is the first person who accepts and even values Black Swan's traits. Lily is the second person who does this, but because so many aspects of her are triggering to the Swan Queen, she flees immediately. The same goes with Beth. Both of them have the same patterns of searching for worth and recognition. Both of them are running in circles. As she slowly falls in love with her sexuality and starts accepting it, a part of her gets scared of the Black Swan smile. She's on the edge between acceptance and rejection. It's such a complicated relationship since all of her self-destructive instincts start to flood through the gates of her conscious mind. This self-destruction is the result of so many years buried in pain and suffering. The Black Swan comes out to show her this, but she can't see it in the mirror. She's too scared to handle it. I mean, who wouldn't be? As her alter ego appears, we can hear Lily's laughter, and we can see the seemingly creepy part of her bleeding. We also have the symbolic act of Nina trimming her nails every time she's overwhelmed by feelings of shame and fright. She's trying to make these little bits of her go away by cutting them. Even though she trims her nails to prevent herself from scratching, she can't let go of her self-harming behavior. That's because it's serving her. It makes her pain that she can't control or the pain caused by other people more bearable. We all possess self-harming behaviors. The only difference is that they are either subtle or very direct. Take a look around you. I can bet all my money on the fact that there are so many people who believe that suffering is noble. There is a difference between letting your dark side control you and being truly present with your dark side. This is what the Swan Queen never understood. When we escape from emotions or let ourselves react impulsively, we are only provoking the shadow to consume us, because in these both ways we avoid confronting the original emotion. Mastering the Black Swan without letting it destroy you is all about being truly willing to confront it. It's tempting to think that reactivity means feeling emotions, but that's not always the case. When we react, we escape feeling the underlying wound, because we let ourselves be controlled by the coping protectors who can serve as the avoiders of the wounds in many different ways. This is why we see a lot of reactivity in children. They're learning how to regulate their emotions. Unfortunately, this is not a skill that all of us learn throughout the years, especially not in healthy ways. She doesn't know how to handle this fear and paranoia, especially when Thomas confronts her and brutally tells her to have confidence in herself. Lily reveals that she stood up for her in front of Leroy's mean commentaries because she notices that Nina's overworking and becoming obsessed with this role. Her attempt of helping is overlaid with Nina's intense judgments. We can even feel her judgments towards Lily in almost every scene in the movie. Lily gets upset, understandably so, and on the way home we can see Nina even more concentrated on fixing her nails. Her fears and feelings of unsafety regarding her sexuality get more and more manifested as her relationship with her mother changes drastically. We can see that Erica is overly controlling because of her fears that her daughter will go through the same things as she did. We find out that she also had an affair with some artistic director. This repetition obviously happens because of generational trauma. It's also a fiber of everything that happens.
Has he tried anything with you? He has a reputation. I have a right to be concerned, Nina. You've been staying late so many nights, rehearsing. I hope he isn't taking advantage, that's all.
He's not.
Good. I just don't want you to make the same mistake I did.
Thanks.
Not like that. I just mean as far as my career was concerned.
What career?
The one I gave up to have you.
You were 28.
So?
And only
Only what?
nothing.
What?
Nothing.
How's your skin?
It's fine.
Are we leaving it alone?
Mm-hmm.
Let me see. Take off your shirt.
No.
Erica is projecting her own shame onto her daughter because she still can't accept her own decision of giving up her life to have Nina. This unfortunately is a very common dynamic in families, in which the parents chose to have the child with the beliefs that they have to, that they are forced from social expectations, or that it's just noble to do so in specific situations. The truth is that the child never owns you anything. You chose to invest in its life. The child has the right to choose what to do. The moment when we see Nina's revelation and willingness to say no, the doorbell rings. Who is it, I wonder? As Lily is standing on the door, her mother is forcefully hiding Sayers. This is quite an interesting event. Nina is being pulled from both sides. The sides that Erica and Nina strongly reject, Nina's imperfect opposite, and Erica herself has the influence of many suppressed emotions in Nina's psyche.
Hello? Hey. What are you doing here?
Wait, I just came by to apologize. You're right, I should have never spoken to him about you.
Sweetheart,
Give me a second.
your dinner.
Mom, please.
Oh, she's a trip.
How do you know where I live?
I have my ways. Jesus, relax. I got it from Susie in the office. Look, I feel really shitty about what I did, and I just really want to make it up to you. So how about I take you out to dinner?
I don't think.
Okay, that's fine. What about, drinks?
Sweetie, you need to rest.
Jesus.
Wait.
What are you doing?
Going out.
What?
Stairs.
Nina, you're on the stage tomorrow.
This is the part of the movie where Nina lets her Black Swan influence her. She goes out with Lily, takes drugs, and lets her sexuality roam free. This is where she goes through this pendulum swing where she goes from extreme rejection to extremely letting those parts of her influence her. She has sex with a couple of guys, numbs every sense of shame. She completely becomes those shadow aspects of herself. Again, this is a very common part of healing because we are not taught about how to be here for those aspects of ourselves and not let them consume us at the same time. The arrival to this other extreme where we let these shadows control us completely is the result of the burdening, the destructive roles that these parts took when we were powerless. This term is especially used in IFS therapy. If you want to look more into how these parts take such difficult and sabotaging roles, you can watch my video called How to Heal the Inner Critic. That video also describes self-harming behaviors even more deeply and accurately. You need to watch it. What I also loved about this movie is how deeply you feel Nina's perspective. It's as if you are seeing the events through her own eyes. When I watched this movie for the first time as a child, I vividly remember feeling Nina's fears and paranoia. I even hated Lily, believing she intentionally spiked Nina's drink to steal her role. This is where reality intertwines with Nina's rejected emotions, leaving us uncertain about what truly happened in the final days of her life. This is where things culminate. Nina sees the Black Swan in the disco lights. She hears it calling to her, reaching out. She becomes intensely drawn to Lily because Lily mirrors her own repressed desires. Nina experiences intense sexual fantasies, with her shadows overtaking her. She falls in love with Lily because, like Leroy, Lily values and accepts the parts of Nina that she herself rejects. That's how that night Lily becomes her safe space. You can even see that Nina is by herself that night when she arrives home. Lily stands behind her as the Black Swan. Look at how she touches her on the shoulder, alerting her when her mother comes to the door. Erica doesn't even perceive that there is someone else in the room. The Swan Queen starts interacting with the Black Swan part of her consciousness much more than ever before. Because of this interaction, Nina feels this empowerment. She's in the state of rebellion because the reality of her relationship with her manipulative mother starts to hit her. The perfect moment tests and triggers Erica as well, making her confront her own shadows regarding her moral sexuality and her daughter, but she denies any acceptance. Erica clearly dislikes any aspect or characteristic of the Black Swan, doesn't she? Because of not taking any responsibility and doing inner work, events like these always need to happen. We have much more exposition of the Black Swan as a character than one would assume. You can see how he's gently holding her from behind, as if she's supporting her to speak for herself, say no, establish boundaries and privacy, and even please her sexual desires. She's not just this evil part of her who wants to endanger her. It's actually working for her best interests. She looks like she's hiding from Erica, which is very interesting. This sexual moment represents the temporary acceptance and love between the White Swan and the Black Swan. The drugs remove the veils of the programming and conditioning of Nina's consciousness. But as these protectors and programming reactivate, this relationship between both of them returns to the same old patterns. It even worsens because Nina starts rejecting this darkness more than ever before. She's scared. Her protectors are trying to lead her whole system in homeostasis again. It's trying to lead her to how her nervous system functioned before. We can see this by her worsened reaction of Lily. She accuses her of intentionally drugging her and wanting to steal her role, even though Lily is her alternate and dances in Nina's place because someone has to dance as the Swan Queen. Everyone is practicing. This is also where Lily reveals that she never came by at Nina's place. We can see that Thomas has a usual response. He doesn't have a special relationship with Lily, unlike how Nina perceives it. I am interested in this moment especially. What is Nina looking at the mirror? I think that she's triggered because of the last time when she was trimming her nails and the Black Swan possessed her, controlling her into harming herself. This is such an accurate depiction of self-harm. I am really impressed. She puts on the music box, but it no longer feels safe. It feels disturbing. She breaks the music box and throws away all of the teddy bears that remind her of her past. The realization of subsiding to her mother's control causes her so much pain that she doesn't know what to do. She wants to get rid of the past as soon as possible. As she's feeling completely out of control, things can get worse for the young ballerina. As the day of the show approaches, the Black Swan keeps resurfacing. It can't drown any longer. This version of Nina is scratching itself. It can't take the suffering of being repressed, so it takes the ultimate approach. It forces Nina to see it everywhere. Nina loses herself into so many emotions at once. She runs to Thomas in tears. It can't be her, she says while trying to reconnect to Leroy again. Her mind feels too unsafe. This is rather symbolic, isn't it? She becomes obsessed with the idea that Lily might take her role because she already knows that the Black Swan is taking over her. The paranoid part is trying to fight this shift in her consciousness, but it can't. What resists persists. The Black Swan is left with no choice. It has to find a very drastic way to communicate, so it slowly starts taking over the Swan Queen's mind. She overworks because it keeps her mind off of home or Erica. There is no safe place for Nina anymore. In her mind, she is in danger and in survival mode. She's running away from herself, but her dark alter ego shows her that she has nowhere to run anymore. She has to face herself. The Black Swan shows the worst fears happen in front of Nina's eyes. It says the stage ready for her. It shows up as the same prince who appeared in her dream at the beginning of the movie. It shows up as Lily and seduces Leroy. Nina can't take these painful emotions anymore. She grabs Beth's stolen things and runs in her hospital room to apologize because of the overburdening shame. She feels this intense shame because of stealing the career away from Beth. It's she feels as if she intentionally ruined the previous star's life. Her dark counterpart also shows up as Beth, expressing the emotions of worthlessness, absolute failure, and the pain of being conditionally loved based on how she performed. This is where she says, "Perfect? I'm not perfect. I'm nothing." These intense emotions of absolute worthlessness and insecurities come in like a landslide. They backfire after years of being repressed. Nina runs away from her wounded counterpart, but as she runs into the elevator, she sees her bloody hands holding the nail file. This is when she's forced to understand the consequences of hurting herself for years and years. And this is when she finally sees how much she stabbed herself for everybody's approval. As she comes home for the last time, she hears herself crying in the darkness. Her malevolent persona wants her to hear her cry, to show her the reality of the trauma that the ballerina is going through. As Nina is trying to wash off the blood, she hears footsteps. We hear Erica whispering, "Sweet girl." As she turns on the lights, she gets immediately reminded of her wounded self. Not knowing how to handle this nightmare, her alter ego doesn't stop. It's crying through all of Erica's unfinished portraits. Take a look at them. You can see her mother's attempts to paint their life as perfect by escaping from reality. Nina tries to silence the Black Swan, but it's too late. What we repress more gathers more momentum. She feels her body cracking as the black wings start to grow in her body. Her eyes redden as her mother thinks that her daughter is mentally sick, but Erica doesn't see that she forced her daughter to fight for her boundaries by breaking her hand. Erica tries to make their life perfect by pretending like nothing happened. She misses the last train to save her daughter's life. As Nina wakes up, she sees the broken ballerina spinning. She finds herself laying on the bed with wrapped hands. "You were scratching all night," her mother says while trying to calm the Swan Queen down. She tries to make her forget about the show. As Erica reveals that she called in the theater, telling them that she's not feeling well, the girl loses her sanity. Her mother's control and lack of real presence forces the sweet girl to crack her wounded hand again. As she loses this veil of any moral sanity, she is starting to possess characteristics of the Black Swan. She even sees her feet becoming like her. She successfully resists this force to play safely as the White Swan, but not for too long. All of these feelings keep calling for her. They keep ruining this peace and perfection. She gets upset simultaneously because of Lily's behavior and completely loses her confidence. She loses balance because she sees her face in one of the girls playing as the Swan. This fear and pressure pushes her to the ground. As her worst nightmare comes true, she can't bear the failure, and so the Black Swan asks to take over. It's her turn. The Black Swan keeps fighting while repeatedly saying, "It's my turn, it's my turn." But in fury and complete powerlessness, Nina kills her with her last attempts to take over. But what the Black Swan doesn't see is that the moment when she kills her, she becomes the Dark Swan. She needed to become the Black Swan in order to do something like this. Wouldn't you agree? As she is feeling unbearable pain, she hides Lily's body in the bathroom. She dances beautifully. She successfully seduces the prince in the whole world. The world can even see the shadows behind her. They have grown wings. She successfully thrills the audience while enjoying the glory of her hard work and perseverance. She kisses Leroy in front of everyone, and she does what he wanted from the start: to seduce him completely. She sees all of the beautiful flowers painting the stage as she returns back to her room. She finally feels as if she has completely put all of the not needed emotions in the bathroom. But wait, why is Lily still alive? Who did she kill then? She finds out the answer as she feels a stabbing pain in her stomach. She takes out the piece of glass as she is bleeding severely. The White Swan finally understands what she has done. She has taken the wrong approach, and so she accepts the consequences. She decides not to call for help because she wants to feel and give everything into this final act of the show. She wants to see this perfection as it is. She comes to acceptance with everything. She finds her peace and reassurance in her death. She chooses to die for this beautiful, chaotic perfection that she experiences. As she finishes the last act and takes her last couple of breaths, she takes a look at her mother and she jumps. She spends the last moment of her life hearing the crowd applauding and cheering, while Thomas is calling her his little princess. As everyone realizes that she is bleeding, it's too late. Even though Leroy already knows, he asks her, "What did you do?" And Nina speaks her final words. "I felt it. Perfect. It was perfect." She hears a crowd calling for her as she sees the light shutting her eyes. When the movie ended, I couldn't help but feel it's a perfect ending, but I wish she knew the different kind of perfect. I wish that she knew that none of what she died for is more perfect than self-love and acceptance for the sake of being alive and living fully. I can't help but feel this frustration because she never gets to experience this absolute perfection, this unconditional love towards oneself and unconditional love from other people. She dies in these confines of perfection to make everyone proud of her. It's just so not fair. We all die for this perfection, but we don't realize that we are all living the same way. Just like how the girl does. We choose this self-destruction in order to become what others want us to be. I can't even imagine how many people died living a life like this, just to understand that they killed themselves a really long time ago. She realized that achieving this perfection cost her everything. She was so convinced that it's worthy that she was willing to risk her life. Trauma can lead us to this extent indeed. I want to say my last observations in order to point out a very important truth. Nina didn't die because she got in touch with her dark side. That's a big misconception. There's a big difference. She didn't know how to handle her dark side. She didn't know how to accept it or regulate it. She didn't know how to be truly present with it. She was too afraid to even pay attention to it. So what basically happened? She resisted it so much that she became it. That's how the universe works. When you strongly resist something, it brings you events with the purpose of awakening. It wants to let you know that it's a part of you, and what you're doing is hating a part of you. We are all each other's mirrors. When we are afraid of killers, we are afraid of the killer aspect of ourselves taking over. When we are afraid of the black raven at the end of the street, we are afraid of the black raven aspect of ourselves. Key to integration is confronting the opposite and letting it return back to our consciousness instead of rejecting it. It's such a simple yet complex truth because there is so much involved in healing than just knowing. Everyone thought that they wanted to be the Swan Queen in the company, but no one realized that being the Black Swan is much more than just getting in touch with your dark side and letting go. It also means learning how to handle it, connecting with it, and most importantly, choosing consciously to reflect everyone's Black Swan collectively, despite the backlash. Nina was called a whore and a greedy bitch, but what the code answers never understood is that those are their own projections of their resistance towards their own Black Swan. It's easy to want something, but it's hard to choose the consequences. Did you like the visit in the Wunderkammer? If you did, please like, subscribe, and share this content if you see it as helpful. Did you also notice the artworks in this video? They're not put accidentally. If you want to understand my philosophical reasons of why I put them in the video, you can become a crow on Patreon. In that tier, I'm posting the paintings and the contacts they have in the video. You can also see them like Easter eggs. But only crows can see through the messages, because they are messengers themselves. You can also become a raven. In that tier, you can ask me for answers and guidance about anything you're curious about, and you're going to receive a high quality answer. I also have playlists on Spotify under my name, Katerina Lunas, if you need something to trigger and enhance your emotional experience. Can you hear the footsteps? They're the footsteps of illusion. It's coming. But what are you going to do about it? Accept it? Or do something about it?